You are the best cooling machine that evolution has ever built. Not the fastest animal, not the strongest, the best at not overheating. You carry between 2 and 5 million sweat glands. A chimpanzee has a fraction of that working the way yours do. You lost your fur to make it work. Bare skin, open to the air, wet, shedding heat in the middle of the day when every predator on the savannah is lying in the shade. That was the whole design. That was the advantage. And then, while still in Africa, in the heat, that animal put something on. Nobody was cold. Nothing had changed about the climate where it happened. We know roughly when, and here is the strange part. We know it from a parasite, not from a scrap of cloth. Cloth does not survive. We know it from an insect that only exists because you got dressed. So why did the best cooled animal on Earth cover itself up? And what did that cost the skin underneath? Let's go. 4 layers today. Why your skin is the way it is. The insect that dates the first clothes. What the first clothes actually were. And the bill your skin is still paying. Before layer 1, one thing. There's a study where researchers put people in the desert in black robes and white robes and measured what happened. The result is the opposite of what you would guess, and it explains the whole video. I'm getting to it in about 10 minutes. Subscribe now so it finds you. Start with the skin because everything else sits on top of it. Most mammals cool down by panting. A dog moves air over a wet tongue. It works, and it has a hard ceiling. You do something almost no other large animal does. You wet your entire outer surface at once. Eccrine sweat glands spread across nearly your whole body, between 2 and 5 million of them. At full output, a human can lose over a liter of sweat an hour. Trained people in heat push past 2. Now compare that to panting. A dog at full effort breathes about 300 times a minute. It cools one wet surface, the tongue, and nothing else. Your core sits at 37 degrees. At 42, the machinery stops working. That is a window of 5 degrees. 5. For an animal that hunts in the middle of the day. You hold that window by wetting 2 square meters of skin at once. That is an enormous cooling capacity, and it only works if the water can get to the air, which is why the fur went. Nina Jablonski spent her career on human skin. Her account of it is simple. Fur and sweat cannot both win. One blocks the other. So our line traded insulation for evaporation, and it happened early. Here is what that trade bought. Over 30 kilometers in real heat, a trained human can run down a horse. It has been done on a course repeatedly. Not because you are fast, because the horse has to stop and cool, and you do not. We can date it sideways, through color. Bare skin in equatorial sun needs pigment, and pigment genes carry their own clock. Work on those genes put strongly pigmented skin at somewhere over 1 million years ago. Skin does not need to be dark under fur. So the fur was already going by then. Sit with the order of events. Fur goes, skin darkens, sweat glands multiply. For roughly 1 million years, the design is finished and it is naked. Then, very recently, that same animal starts putting things on its body. Now the insect, because this is the part almost nobody knows. There are 3 kinds of louse living on human beings. Each one is a piece of evidence. Start with the third one, because it dates something else entirely. The pubic louse is not closely related to the other 2. Its nearest relative lives on gorillas. Genetic work puts that split at roughly 3.3 million years ago. Sit with what that means. A parasite jumped between 2 species and then stayed. It could only stay because there was a patch of coarse hair to hold, separated from the hair on the head. 2 patches. A gap between them. That gap is the fur loss, and the louse dates it to over 3 million years ago. 3 species of insect, 3 separate clocks. One running on hair, one on hairlessness, one on cloth. Now back to the 2 that matter here. The head louse lives in hair. It grips hair shafts, it feeds on the scalp, and it has been with our line for a very long time. The body louse looks almost identical. It does one thing differently. It does not live on the body. It lives in clothing. It lays its eggs in the seams of fabric. It crawls onto the skin only to feed. The numbers are worth having. A female lays 200 to 300 eggs in a lifetime of about 30 days. Eggs hatch in 6 to 9 days, glued into a seam. Take the clothing away for 2 weeks and the whole population is gone. That is how tight the dependence is. That means the body louse cannot exist without clothes. No clothing, no habitat, no louse. So, the moment the body louse split from the head louse is the moment clothing became a permanent part of human life. And a split like that can be dated because it is written in the insect's own DNA. Mark Stoneking and his colleagues did exactly that and published the first estimate in 2003. Their result came out around 70,000 years ago. Later teams reran it with more genes and more populations and pushed the number back. Some estimates land closer to 170,000 years. The range is wide, and I will say that plainly. What the estimates agree on is the shape of the answer. Clothing is old enough to sit well inside our time in Africa, and far too young to be anything but recent for a species a million years bare. Read that again. We dated the invention of clothes using an animal that lives in the seams. The cloth rotted, the insect kept the record. Now, what were the first clothes actually made of? Not woven fabric. Weaving is much later, and it needs plants, spinning, and a loom. The first clothing was skin, an animal hide taken off, cleaned, and made soft enough to wrap around a body. And that is a real technology with real tools, which is why we can find it. Start with the scraper, a stone flake with a worked edge used to push fat and tissue off the inside of a hide. Leave that fat on and the hide rots. Take it off and it dries into something like a board. So there is a second step. The hide has to be worked, oiled, and softened over and over for hours. Then the awl, a pointed bone or stone tool for making holes through hide. Put a number on the work because people skip this part. Processing one large hide by hand takes something like 8 to 10 hours. Scraping, soaking, working the fat in, softening it again as it dries. One hide, one day of somebody's life, before a single hole is made. And there is a trick in the middle of it that sounds invented. Fat is not enough on its own. The hide needs something that gets into the fibers. Brain works, animal brain, mashed with warm water at about 40 degrees, worked into the skin. The old rule among people who still do this: every animal has just about enough brain to tan its own hide. That is not folklore. It is roughly true, and it has been tested by people who do it for a living. So the kit is a stone flake, a bone point, a strip of sinew, and the animal's own brain. Nothing bought, nothing traded. All of it comes off the same carcass. And all gives you holes. Holes plus a strip of sinew give you a join. That is the whole early kit. Scraper, awl, sinew. No needle yet. Now go to a site in southwestern France and look at something Neanderthals left behind. Marie Ceresi and her team published a find in 2013 from 2 Neanderthal sites, dated to around 50,000 years ago. The objects are called lissoirs. A lissoir is a smoother, made from a piece of deer rib. It is shaped and polished. You rub a hide with it until the surface goes soft and water-resistant. Leather workers still use bone smoothers today. They look remarkably similar. That is a specialized tool for one specific stage of preparing skin. You do not make one of those by accident. Neanderthals were working hides carefully, in Europe, in the cold, before our line arrived there. But there is a gap, and it shows up in the tool counts. Neanderthal sites give us scrapers by the thousand. They give us smoothers. They give us awls. What they do not give us, anywhere, is an eyed needle. Not one. Across hundreds of sites and roughly 300,000 years of occupation, our line reaches Europe and needles appear. Same cold, same animals, same hides. One group sews closed seams, the other does not. There is one more ingredient, and for a long time nobody understood it was one. Ochre, red iron oxide, ground to powder. We used to file it under decoration, then people looked at what it does to skin. Ground ochre mixed with fat helps preserve a hide. It slows rot, it repels insects. Go to Blombos Cave in South Africa, around 100,000 years old. Archaeologists found a complete processing kit there. 2 abalone shells used as containers. Inside them, ochre, crushed bone, charcoal, and traces of fat. Grindstones beside them, hammerstones, a workspace. 100,000 years ago, somebody was mixing a compound to a recipe. Not painting a wall, making a material. Then comes the object that changes everything, and it is small. The eyed needle. An awl makes a hole. A needle carries the thread through the hole itself. The difference sounds trivial, and it is not. An eye lets you sew a fine, closed, continuous seam. A drape hangs, a garment closes. And a closed garment traps a layer of still air against the skin. That layer is the whole point. The oldest-eyed needles run back roughly 40,000 to 50,000 years. The best come from Siberia. One from Denisova Cave is about 7.6 centimeters long, made of bird bone, and roughly 50,000 years old. Look at the eye on a needle like that. Under a millimeter across, drilled with stone, somebody sat down and drilled a hole under a millimeter wide, in bone, with rock. That is not a casual object. That is a specialist making a precision tool. Look where they appear. Not in the warm places, in the cold ones. Which brings us to the center of this. You were not designed to be covered. Your entire cooling system assumes an open surface. Cover it and you are running the machine with the vents shut. And that raises the obvious question. If clothing works against your cooling system, why did it start in a hot place? Somebody actually tested this in the desert with instruments. In 1980, a team including Amiram Shkolnik published a study in Nature on Bedouin robes. The question was simple. Bedouin in the Sinai wear black robes in blazing sun. Everyone assumes that is a mistake. So they measured it. Same volunteer, same desert, same conditions, changing only what he wore. A black robe, a white robe, a tan army uniform, and shorts. 4 outfits, 1 person. Air temperature between 35 and 46 degrees. The black robe absorbs far more solar energy at the outer surface. That part is exactly what you expect. Here is what they found. The heat load reaching the person was the same in the black robe as in the white one. The same. Not close. The same. The extra heat never reaches the skin. Air moving inside the loose robe carries it away first. A loose garment in the sun is not a blanket. It is a shade structure you are wearing. It blocks direct radiation, it holds a moving layer of air, and it lets sweat evaporate off the skin underneath. That is the answer to the paradox. The first clothing in a hot place was not for warmth. It was shade you could take with you. And there's a second job, less obvious and just as important. Bare skin in full equatorial sun takes damage, not only the surface. Strong sunlight breaks down folate in the blood. Folate matters enormously for a body building new cells. An hour of strong equatorial sun measurably lowers it. That is not a slow effect over years, that is the same afternoon. Dark pigment handles a lot of that. A layer of hide over the shoulders handles more. So the first covering is doing 2 things at once, and neither of them is keeping you warm. So what ended it? Not vanity, not modesty. Those came after, and they came with rules. What ended the bare skin was walking north. Watch the chronology because each step is small. For most of the story, a hide is optional. You use it in the sun, you drop it when you do not need it. Then groups move into places with a real winter, and the calculation flips. Now clothing is not shade. It is the only reason a naked tropical animal can be there at all, and optional becomes permanent. Ian Gilligan has spent years on exactly this transition, separating simple clothing from complex fitted clothing. Simple clothing is a hide over the shoulders. It works down to a point and then it stops working. You can put numbers on that point because insulation is measurable. The unit is called a klo. 1 klo is roughly what a person needs sitting still at 21 degrees. A single draped hide gives you about 1 klo, maybe 1.5 if it is thick. At 0 degrees, resting, you need around 3. At -20, you need 4 or more, and every gap in it has to be closed. So the hide over the shoulders takes you to roughly freezing. Then it stops. Everything past that line requires seams. Complex clothing is fitted, layered, and sewn closed, and it needs the whole toolkit: scrapers, awls, needles, thread. The archaeology follows that split. The colder the region, the more of that toolkit you find. And once clothing is permanent, 3 things happen to the body underneath. The first is the louse we started with. A permanent seam is a permanent home. The second is pigment. Cover the skin and the pressure that kept it dark relaxes, and the pressure to let light in goes up. The third is vitamin D. Your skin makes it from sunlight. Cover the skin and production drops. That is a real cost, and it has a number today. Estimates of vitamin D insufficiency across many populations run near 40%. In places with long winters and heavy covering, the figures go higher still. Your skin has a factory in it. You keep it in the dark, and look at where that ends up. The average wardrobe in a wealthy country now holds well over 100 garments. Global production runs past 100 billion items a year. Your skin is covered for something like 90% of your waking hours. The hide over the shoulders was optional. This is not. We traded a body that could shed heat on an open plain for a body that can live anywhere and needs a supply of clothing to do it. And most of us never even knew it was gone. Now the part that makes this less grim, because that trade bought the entire planet. A naked tropical animal has a range. It is a big range and it has edges. Sewn clothing removes the edges. Look at what a finished ancient outfit actually looks like when one survives. The best example is a man found in an alpine glacier, about 5,300 years old. His clothing was studied in detail, and the material list is the striking part. Analysis identified hides from at least 5 different animals in one outfit: goat, sheep, cattle, deer, and a hat made from bear. Different animals for different jobs. One skin for the coat, another for the leggings, another for the shoes, another for the cap. That is not somebody wearing whatever they had. That is a person selecting materials by property. Stiff where it needs to hold shape, soft where it touches skin, thick where the cold comes in. His shoes are the part that stops people. The sole is bear. The upper is deer. Between them sits a net of woven bark strips, and packed inside that net, dry grass for insulation. About 1 centimeter of it, a layered boot with an insulating fill, 5,300 years ago. His coat is made of strips, alternating light and dark, sewn together with sinew. Somebody cut that hide into strips, sorted them by color, and put them back together in a pattern. 5,000 years ago, and the thinking is completely modern, and the tools tell the same story. Needles get finer over time, which means seams get tighter, which means the still air layer gets better. The whole northern half of human history sits on that. There is one more thing the covering did, and nobody planned it. It made the body a surface you could read. A hide says where you are from. A cut says who made it. A color says which group. None of that is possible on bare skin. Skin is just skin. The moment you can put something on, you can put a message on. Every uniform, every flag on a sleeve, every rule about what a body may show runs back to that. The first garment solved a problem with the sun. The second one said something. Now, what if it had gone differently? What if the body louse had never split off? Then we would have almost no way to date clothing at all. The whole timeline would rest on a handful of tools. What if fur had never gone? You would run hot, hunt in the cool hours, and never need to invent any of this. You would also never cross a winter. What if clothing had stayed optional, the way it was in Africa? Then the map of humanity stops at the frost line and stays there. Some of you are thinking, they covered up out of modesty. Surely that came first. Fair question. The evidence points the other way, and the reason is the order of things. Modesty is a rule. Rules need a group that already shares a practice. You cannot have a rule about covering before covering exists. The hide comes first, as shade and as protection, and the meaning gets attached later. You can see that in how wildly the rules vary. What must be covered changes completely between cultures, and it keeps changing. The physics does not vary. The sun is the same everywhere, and so is the skin under it. So the practice is old and physical. The rules are newer and local. One more number because it puts the whole thing in scale. Our line has been bare for something over 1 million years. We have been dressed for maybe 170,000 of those, and permanently for far less. That is under 20% of the time we have had this skin. For the other 80%, the design ran exactly as built. Open, wet, cooling. So, back to where we started. You are still the best cooling machine evolution ever built, and you spend almost every day with the vents shut. Your ancestors put on the first hide in a hot place, and they did it for shade, not for warmth. Everything after that, every seam, every needle, every rule about what a body may show, is built on that one decision to carry your own shade. One question for the comments, and be honest. What is the one piece of clothing you own that your body would genuinely be better off without? I already know somebody down there is going to say a tie.